Hello and welcome. My name's Sandy Hood and we're going to look at budgeting as preparation for the CIMA Management Accounting P1 exam. As you know, budgets can be used for planning and for control purposes. Here we're only looking at the planning budgets, and the idea of the class is to look at being able to take the knowledge that you already have from your financial accounting, that very basic understanding of the cost of sales, and use that knowledge by rearranging the calculation so that we can see it as the basis for a lot of planning budgets. So we're going to start with the cost of sales layout. We'll rearrange it so that we can identify how much needs to be produced, and we'll also use it in the same way to identify how much of the raw materials we need to purchase. And then we'll look at dealing with modifications to that layout by incorporating waste, and we'll round off by looking at question 11 from the P1 tutorial exam on the Pearson Vue website. Here's the cost of sales formula. I'm sure that you are familiar with this. We identify sales revenue, we deduct cost of sales, and we find the gross profit. As we calculate the cost of sales, we are looking at opening inventory plus purchases minus the closing inventory to give us the cost of sales. And this is the beginnings of what this class is all about. And I use the subtotal. So although in a lot of calculations you're simply saying opening inventory plus production cost minus inventory equals cost of sales, here I'm pulling the two apart and we're identifying the subtotal as well, because that's a very useful aspect in this budgeting aspect that we're looking at. So our subtotal here is 2,800. Sure, opening inventory plus production cost gives us 2,800, but as well as that, closing inventory of 800 plus cost of sales gives the same value. And I can rearrange our cost of sales calculation to create a production cost calculation. In other words, I start with the 2,000 cost of sales, add the closing inventory, get the subtotal, deduct the opening inventory, and that gives me my production cost. And then I can do it for units. So here I've got an opening inventory in units, and that has enabled me to identify the sales. So opening inventory plus production cost, it wouldn't be production cost, plus the production units would give me a subtotal of 1,400. Then I deduct the closing inventory, and that gives me the sales in units. If I want to then figure out the production units needed, sales units plus closing inventory give me the subtotal, less the opening inventory, and I now know how many units I need to produce. And this will often occur in a question. The question will often tell you that we are predicting a particular level of sales. We have identified our opening inventory and we've forecast our closing inventory. You now need to work out how many units have to be produced in order to achieve our target sales and our target closing inventory. And we can do the same when we're dealing with purchases. So sure, on the left hand side we've got sales working its way down to production, and in here I've drawn attention to the fact that the closing inventory is made up of finished goods, saleable units that we can actually sell to customers, so that we are seeing that as distinct from raw material inventory. So if we are going to produce 1,100 units and each unit requires 3 kilograms of material, then we require 3,300 kilograms of material. How much should we produce? How much should we purchase? Well, the material requirement, 3,300, plus the closing inventory will give us a subtotal, less the opening inventory gives us how much we have to purchase. So use the financial accounting knowledge you already have. You don't need to learn this for the first time. You're rearranging something that you know already. Now we're going to take it a step further by including waste. We expect that 100 units produced will not be of the standard needed to be included in the saleable inventory. So we have to take the sales, fine, add the closing inventory. All of this is saleable closing inventory. That gives us a subtotal. Deduct the opening inventory, and that gives us the good production needed. We need to produce 1,100 saleable units. We then add the waste that we're expecting to give us a total production of 1,200. Now, as soon as we've got more production, we're going to need to have more purchases. So 1,200 units means that we're going to need to have 3,600 kilograms of material in order to make those units. Add on the 400 closing inventory, gives us the subtotal 4,000, deduct the opening inventory, and now we have to purchase 3,300 kilograms. Now, we expected that 200 kilograms of raw materials will be wasted in production. Slightly different. The first one was finished goods being wasted. Now we're looking at raw materials. And sometimes this is evaporation. It's that what comes out is less than what went in. So, sure, we start off with our 1,200 units to have to be produced. That was on our previous slide. We need 3,600 kilograms of good material. But we know we're going to waste 200. So we have to add 200 on. That gives me the total material required. Add the closing inventory, deduct the opening inventory, and that brings my purchases up to 3,500. But we don't always get the number of kilograms or the number of units of production that are wasted. Sometimes it's described as a percentage. Now you've always got to be careful with the percentages. Are we saying a percentage of the good production, or are we saying a percentage of the total? And very often in our exam questions it's a percentage of the total, and the total is a figure we don't know. The good production and the good material are both figures that we do know. So we need to ascribe a different approach. The good production will be what is left after the waste percentage has been taken off. This grossing up method. So gross up the good production by dividing it by the good percentage. Let's see an example. We need 450 kilograms of raw material to achieve a budgeted production. We waste 10% of the material that goes into the process. In other words, the good production represents 100% minus 10% of the material that goes in. It represents 90%. So we need 450 kilograms divided by 90%, in other words 500 kilograms in this particular case. Now we'll look at a typical exam question. Here, this is question 11 from the Pearson Vue P1 tutorial exam. Each finished unit of product G contains 2 litres of ingredient L. Losses during production are 10% of input of ingredient L. Okay, just like our previous one. So 90% of the input becomes part of the finished product. Budgeted data for the period, finished output 2,745 units of product G. Opening inventory of our raw material 680 litres, closing inventory 450 litres. Our job, what is the material purchases budget for ingredient L for the next period? Now sometimes we can look at a multiple choice question and we can identify either the answer or eliminate certain answers that just could not be true. Here the answers are pretty close together and we're not able to use that exam technique, but we can use the technique that we've been looking at already. So taking the question information on the left and the layout that we've now mastered on the right, we can now derive exactly how much purchases we need. We need to be able to produce 2,745 units of product G. So that goes in as our production figure. Each contains 2 litres of ingredient L. So we need 5,490 good litres. Then we're going to add the waste of raw materials, and here we're using a divide sum. 10% of the total, in other words, only 90% of what goes in will be the good material. So we divide 5,490 by 90%, and that gives us 6,100 litres of material that is required. Our closing inventory is going to be 450, so we add that on. Our opening inventory is going to be 680, so we take that off. And now we know that we need to purchase 5,870 litres of the raw material L. And sure enough, it's one of the 4 alternatives. Fairly straightforward. And I think if you can use that particular layout, you can complete this well within the 90 seconds available. What did we do? We looked at the cost of the sales layout. We rearranged for production. We included waste. We looked at Pearson Vue P1 question 11. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Sandy Hood. I'm accessible through Facebook page Accountancy Tutor and sandy@sandyhood.com. My face-to-face classes are held on the south coast of England, very near to Arundel, and sometimes some are held near to Brighton. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and good luck with your exams.